All right, should be up and running. Got about 3 minutes until the close, so we'll definitely take a look at the final close here for the Qs and SPY. Let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. This is Ifan from the Strategic Day Trader, and this is your market wrap for June 6th, 2022. As I mentioned, still open right now for another couple of minutes, but I don't think we're going to get a lot of change here in the Qs and SPY, and we'll see where it finishes for today. Right now at 307.23, we had a gap up that got sold on the Qs and the SPY. See if the IWM picture is much different. No, still sideways. So coming into today, we were neutral. Okay, and the reason that we were neutral was that we had time frame conflict. Okay, so first looking at the hourly on the Qs and the SPY, they're very, very similar. We're going into the end of the day on Friday, we're basically in the middle of this range. Okay, we tried to break down first. That didn't want to follow through, and then we tried to break out, and that didn't really follow through. So first we tried to break down, then we tried to break out. Now we're back into the middle, and we're still going to be in the middle today. So that was the hourly there, middle of the range. So that's a neutral, pretty much neutral price action. Daily is turning bullish. Okay, daily we ended the downtrend. The more that we base here, the more bullish. The weekly, however, is bearish. The weekly is setting up a weekly sell setup, still in a downtrend, declining 20 MA, right? So on. So we have a neutral hourly, a bullish daily, and a bearish weekly, and then we have another neutral monthly here. Monthly, you can see kind of a doji bar. Is that going to be a reversal bar, or is that a pause that continues? Right? We're still waiting to find out. So going into tomorrow, really the plan is the same as it was for today as far as market bias. Over last week's high, we're bullish short term because we are going to be running into weekly resistance there as we move up. And then if we break underneath last week's low, then we're triggering that weekly sell setup, and that's more of a longer term bearish bias. Okay, weekly is in this downtrend, triggering potentially the next leg down. Okay, so that is going to be the plan for me, okay, for tomorrow. All right, neutral, and really wait for the time frame conflict to resolve itself. All right, let's go into the plays from today. The biggest play, or really the biggest symbol for me, was the EMBK. EMBK was an additional find right at the open, and wow, just got a nice little drop there. But first, we played it as a base breakdown. Nice base there. This looks a lot like the grab. I don't know if you recall the grab. I may have to go back a couple weeks actually, but this was very much like the way that the grab set up right at the open, and then ended up being good for multiple plays. Here it is. See this? Kind of initial drop there, so that kind of signals that, okay, this thing's on the move, and then we get a nice base breakdown. A little bit better follow through, I would say, on that day, though, on the grab, but the EMBK did set up a couple different times. You can see even in the afternoon there. First breakdown, then did try it here, and that didn't work. And so if you recall, yeah, I was, of course, disappointed because I thought this was going to be really, really good. And it flipped, and I was like, but, it doesn't bother me because I like the daily a lot. I like the setup a lot, it's good. And so then, that set up again later here. So, once we get that set up, base, continue, add on the EMBK, which is set up again even later on. Again, right there, you can see really tight base and then a breakdown. Once we get that focus, we know what the day looks good. Those are the ones we want to pay a lot of attention to, right? And that's what we talked about last week, right, with the scalps, is that as much as we can get a good larger time frame or a gap, a good level 2, and then a good pattern, right? And so when we look at these patterns, even the one that didn't work, that's a nice looking pattern. We have a sell setup, okay? A sell setup that turns into a base, right? Almost turns into a bleed pattern here, right? I don't have a problem with that. And then, of course, in the morning there, breakdown, and then more breakdowns, right? So when you get the nice pattern and the good level 2 and the good daily, I would say on the SHCR though, maybe the daily not as impressive. Location was a little bit difficult, but the level 2 and the pattern were fine. There it is. Okay, that was pretty good on this SHCR. So initially I mentioned it as just a 15-minute sell setup, which based. So here's the retracement and then turned into a base. And then someone else mentioned the level 2 actually ended up being really good. So then level 2 was a nice little play there on the SHCR. So some decent scalps, as just has been kind of consistently the case. It's just a matter of finding them for the last few weeks. All right, but as far as market goes, going into tomorrow, we're still gonna see how this hourly base ends up resolving, because so far it's tried to break down and tried to break out. Now it's kind of set this range. All right, and we'll see if it can pick a direction here. Okay, though maybe the only other thing to note here is the fact that we did gap up and get sold. That does a little bit more of a bearish leaning. Okay, that's not a very, obviously not a bullish response to a gap up, to kind of give the gap away, but we still are inside this range. Okay, so to keep it simple, once we break above last week's high, bullish, and once we break below last week's low, bearish. All right, we'll see how that turns out. All right, guys, I will be back at it tomorrow, and I'll talk to you then. Have a good evening.